Good evening. Welcome to Village Hall. Today is Monday, November 4. Anybody who's watching live on Monday, November 4, we encourage you to call in if you care to. Our call-in number is 769. What is you on the next page?
1677. No.
What is the phone number there?
1677.
Yeah.
It's
Just
over
don't
there.
answer
This is a
that.
recording
I'll
machine.
sum
Put
it
it
down.
next to Larry.
I'll
Poor
sum that
Larry.
up in a minute.
7691677.
That's what I thought. But, welcome. This is our annual joint meeting of the Pleasantville Board of Trustees with the Pleasantville Union Free School District Board of Education. Welcome all. Glad to have you here. We switch back and forth year to year between Village Hall and the school, and it's our turn to host. So we have an agenda with a bunch of subjects that we're going to go through, but perhaps it would be good for you, Shane, to identify and let everyone know who's in the audience on your behalf.
Okay, so in the audience on our behalf, we have Irene Powers, who's our district clerk. Thank you. I'm not speaking into the microphone. I apologize. We have Julie Schwartz. No, we do though. You're here.
Here. Evidence would suggest.
Who does our publicity? We have Steve Chamberlain, who is our assistant superintendent of buildings and grounds. Sorry, Steve. And then we have John Barrowline. We have John Barrowline, who's our athletic director. Behind him, slightly to my left, is Dan McCann, who's the principal of Pleasantville High School. To his right, we have Stacy Tedrow, who is a English special education teacher and also the New York State coordinator of the Bully Project. Behind her, we have Vivian Osowski, who is the principal of the middle school. And sitting next to her, we have Dr. Carolyn McGuffick, who is the head of our special ed program. And at the table here, we also have David Quattrochi, who is the assistant superintendent of business for the Pleasantville Union Free School District. And then we have Lois Winkler next to him, who is a trustee of the Board of Education. And we have Lou Conti, who is also a trustee of the Board of Education and also our liaison when it comes to, what's the word I want to use? Advocacy.
Yes.
Thank you. And next to him we have Larry Bowes, who is also a board trustee, who also is in charge of our finance committee. And next to him is Emily Persons, who is kind of head of communications for the Board of Education. And next to her we have Mary Fox-Alter, who is our superintendent.
Great, thank you for that. And we have our usual suspects, Brian Skarstad, Jonathan Cunningham, Minnie Berard, who's the school district liaison, Colleen Wagner, and then Patty Dwyer, village administrator. So we were going to start out with a discussion about our youth officer program. We've had, I think, a very strong relationship for a good long while. We've made a few changes on our side of the table with employees who had well-deserved promotions, and I'm going to invite our chief, Richard Love, to describe the changes that have been made in the last few months. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to get together with the board and the school board. Mary Fox-Alter and I work together very closely, as well as the principals of the other schools. I believe the youth program and working with the school is very important. 3.5 years ago, we brought Jesse Wallman in as our new youth officer, who was, it was brand new at it. He was a little nervous, but I have to say, over the last 3.5 years, he has done an absolute incredible job with the youth in his community and what he does at the schools. He teaches a 8th grade drug and alcohol awareness program. That's what he does every Wednesday, I believe it is. So he's been doing that for the last few years. Any of the functions you can see Jesse at, he goes up, he'll have lunch with the kids at the Bedford Road School, he'll go up to the high school. He's been involved and really jumped in with both feet, and he's been a huge asset to this community. And I'm very proud that we were able to make him a sergeant, which he was well-deserved. But the problem with making Jesse a sergeant is then he moves on to patrol, and we have to make a new youth officer. And to take his place is Officer Morgan Dillon. She came to us, she had 7 years with the Westchester County Police Department. She's been with us for a little over a year, and she has done such an incredible job and cares so much about this community that we believe she was the best person to take over the role for Jesse. And they have actually been working together for the last month or so, and it's been a very smooth transition. I know it's difficult to jump in, and you can see sometimes Morgan tells me, wow, there's a lot more than I thought there was here. But she is doing a terrific job, and Jesse's there to help her all the way. So if I could just bring them both up so you can meet both of them. Ex-detective youth officer Jesse Woolman, now Sergeant Jesse Woolman, in my patrol division. He's doing a phenomenal job, has done a phenomenal job, and will continue to do it. Officer Morgan Dillon, she is now in the Youth Bureau, working with Detective Herb Peterson, and we added a sergeant to that division, which is Sergeant Anthony Preet. So they report to him now. Gives me a little bit of a break, but I still get a report every day on what's going on with the youth and everything that's going on in the community. But I believe these two officers will continue to work together. Just because Jesse has moved into the patrol division does not mean he's not going to deal and handle and be at the schools, because he cares. And I know Morgan cares, so they'll work together. And I think it's going to be a wonderful year. I think that you're really getting two of my finest officers to be in the schools with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Lois is going to come up with Jesse. We have a little surprise. But you can stay seated.
He just loves this top. Let's stand beside me. Look at Jesse. Could you
I'll
turn
feel
any later,
protected.
Jesse? He just loves this stuff.
Good evening. It gives me great pleasure to represent the board tonight as we recognize you for your unwavering dedication to the education and well-being of our youth. The Pleasantville School District and the Village of Pleasantville have a long history of cooperation and shared services. They've been a role model for other Westchester communities. But what makes these efforts work is the commitment of the individuals involved. Since Jesse started as a youth officer in Pleasantville, he has worked closely with the school administration to provide programs and support for our students that will enable them to make the right choices when faced with difficult decisions. Jesse has been very visible and a contributing member of our school community in the classroom, at PTA-sponsored parent programs, and at a wide variety of school events. Over the years, his caring and concern and his willingness to share both his expertise and his time has earned him the trust and respect of students, parents, and staff. Jesse, we congratulate you on your promotion, and we wish you all the best, but we're going to miss you. And I have a little certificate to present to you from the Pleasantville Union Free School District with profound appreciation. Proudly presents this Distinguished Service Award to Pleasantville Police Sergeant Jesse Woolman, in recognition of his sincere concern for the overall well-being of young people of Pleasantville and his contributions to the 7th grade career day, 8th grade positive decision-making classes, parent workshops, and high school parent coffees, school safety, and many other school district programs. So, congratulations.
And Jesse, unlike the village, we don't have the jurisdiction or the ability to, have a Jesse Woolman Day. Maybe we can lobby Peter and the rest of the board. We would like to be able to say that,
I will say that, this is unexpected. I didn't prepare anything, but thank you very much. I truly appreciate it, and you guys were great to me and made my job easy to do. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
I would be remiss if I didn't take this moment just to talk about how with such pride I have in saying what an amazing contributor to our school district you have been. And I know I'm going to have a great relationship with Morgan. We've already met. We've talked extensively. She'll be one of my hosts on the Superintendent's Corner that's coming up shortly. And Chief, it goes without saying, the partnership we have developed has been terrific, fantastic. I don't hesitate calling the chief. He doesn't hesitate calling me. And there isn't a moment where something doesn't happen here, or if there's something we need a heads up about, the Pleasantville Police Department is always there for us, particularly the two of you. And a big shout out to your staff, to everybody there. But again, it's been a great relationship, and the direct beneficiaries of that are our kids and this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. While we're on that subject, Chief, maybe you can come back and contribute to this conversation. I think as everyone in the community knows, and certainly everyone in the school district knows, our police department works pretty hard, just as you have heard in our youth program, to try to provide some positive reinforcement and to steer kids back in between the white lines when it looks like they need that. And that's been going on for a long time, and I think we've got good, strong programs in place. I will say, from where I sit, and I know where the chiefs sit, and I think where you all sit, we are seeing, just as many communities are, an increasing problem with alcohol abuse. I say increasing problem. I think parents need to take it seriously enough to realize that we've had a number of incidents in this village with pretty young kids where it isn't too much of a stretch to say that someone could have died. And it's a source of very, very great concern to us. And I can tell you that in my own experience, my own very recent experience, I've encountered bands of kids, obviously underage, openly drinking in public places without even a hint of self-consciousness about it. And that's something that simply has to change. People need to take seriously the fact that it's not just kids being kids when you end up with kids in the back of an ambulance and kids with blood alcohol levels that have the potential to kill them. So I don't know what we can say to make parents fully aware of this, and I realize obviously kids will do things without their parents' sanction, but by the same token, I can also report that we don't always get the support we need from parents when the police encounter a problem. Would you echo that, Chief? Have I got that?
Absolutely, I agree. I've been a police officer for 28 and a half years, and quite honestly, I haven't seen it at this level ever before. It's not just Pleasantville, it's every community out there. It seems like it's starting younger. Children are starting younger, they're trying things. There's kids walking around with bottles, water bottles that they empty and fill with vodka, and they're drinking vodka. They don't understand that when an adult is drinking that, they're mixing that. They're not drinking straight vodka, and these children don't understand what is happening. And before you know it, they have a 3.0 alcohol level and could possibly die. In the last 2 months, 2.5 months, we've had 2 children taken to the hospital that very possibly could have died. And I am very upset right now because we just had an incident this weekend, and we are going to lose a child in Pleasantville. It's going to happen if we don't all get together, form some type of committee, some type of coalition, something to get together so that we're all on the same page. You see a child out there drinking, you need to let us know. You're with a child drinking, you're a child yourself and someone's drinking and something happens to them, call the police. Are you going to get in a little bit of trouble? Maybe. Mom and Dad going to come? Maybe. But you're going to save somebody's life. We're here now to save lives. That's where we are right now. And I just think people don't start with heroin. We've had heroin overdoses. It doesn't start there. It starts somewhere. And I think the problem is it's starting with alcohol, and it's getting worse, and it's growing, and it's growing, and it's growing. And the police department can no longer be that tiny police department that just tries to help the kids out and get them home, make sure they're safe. I can't do it anymore, because I can't live with myself if someone dies. So we are going to be very proactive. We're going to go to a zero tolerance. If there is a child out there drinking, they will be at the police station, and their parents will be coming to pick them up. And if it continues, then we'll have to notify CPS. We'll have to take further steps. But you can obviously see from my tone and my mannerisms how upset I am about this. I'm not going to lose a child here. I can't. I love kids too much.
I think it's really important, and we've talked about this often, and we've been talking about it as a school board, that children need purposeful activities, they need destinations, and parents need to be open with each other and say, are you having a party at your house that night? And if you are, have you locked up your liquor cabinet? Who's around? Who's being supervised? You really should know the house to which your child is attending an event and be open about that conversation. Every piece of research shows that the longer you can, Dr. McGuffick is here and she can probably add to it more than I, that the longer you stay away from alcohol or drug issues, the better off it is. A young child is developing, 14, 15, 16, 17 years of age. Those are dangerous ages. And children should be involved in many different types of purposeful activities. They shouldn't be left alone. They shouldn't be unmonitored in the sense of that you don't know where they're going or whose house they're at. Everyone should be aware of that, and they shouldn't hesitate picking up the phone and calling and asking about that. And it really isn't, the chief said it correctly. The idea that children will take a bottle of Poland Springs water and fill it with vodka and drink it as if it were water. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. It adds to such alcohol poisoning, it's unbelievable. So people need to be aware of that and not have those frank and open conversations with their children.
Excuse me. One thing, too, we were speaking about this before, is there used to be a great county program, I think, called Clear Choices, which involved the parents. One of the big problems is that we have parents giving out alcohol. We have parents that are partying before games, and that's not helping the situation. And believe me, the kids knows whose houses they should go to. So we talked about it before. We would be very interested in starting some sort of coalition or group. And if there's any parents that would be interested in helping us with that, you can get in touch with the chief, or you'd be happy to get involved. Give me a call or an email as well, and we'll see if we can't put something together that would get the parents involved. Because that's where it starts.
Right.
I think if you talk to Jesse, he'll tell you that most kids get their booze from home. So.
Right. Great point, Colleen.
Well, and as we also pointed out, we don't always get the response that we need from parents when the police pick up kids. These problems are community problems. They're community problems everywhere, but it's not the government's problem or the school district's problem to keep your 15-year-old or your 14-year-old or your 17-year-old safe on a Friday night or a Saturday night. We all play a role in that, and we take that role very, very seriously. But when the services we provide come back to you, we need support on that. And it is disheartening, to say the least, when we bring somebody's kid back and they are in a severe situation with alcohol, and the parents appear to be disinterested or consider it to be somebody else's problem. So, I mean, as you just heard from the chief, and I think that we are unanimous in taking this view, it isn't just going to be a circumstance where we can overlook this sort of stuff. I can tell you, as we'll report soon, there is a proposed development up on the Methodist Church property, and a couple of weekends ago I went on a little hike in order to really walk the property, and it was no surprise to me, but there's a little grove up there that is littered with vodka bottles and beer cans, and I somewhat doubt that it's a meeting of the Methodists. So,
Well, one other point too is, and the chief brought it up, that a lot of kids are afraid to call the police when someone's in trouble, but there are laws that protect, anybody if they're doing something in the efforts of safety. And that's the word we need to spread also, is that don't call your friends. You need to call an adult or call 911. So I'm sure Morgan maybe also can add that, into her conversation at the schools, that the right thing to do is to call help, not call more friends to come see what's happening. Right.
In our 8th grade classes,
Right.
Drug and Alcohol, the Good Samaritan Law.
Can you go to the microphone? I'm sorry, just some people here. Say the name, Good Samaritan program.
Yeah, it's called the Good Samaritan Law, and it's already in place in our 8th grade classes, but I'm also trying to introduce that into the high school as well.
Great.
Yes, in addition to social host law, which is, legal sanctions for parents that are aware of alcohol consumption in their home by minors. So I don't want to get into with that in front of me, but that's also something else we can use.
Great.
And today I was at the middle school and I was speaking with Viv, and we were talking about the youth program, the youth officer program in 8th grade, and I think, Jesse, you could probably speak to it better than anyone, that you do this annual survey of the kids and they put their heads down on a desk and put their hands up. You would ask if they've ever seen one of their friends under the influence, and 7th grade, no, but by the time spring comes in 8th grade, oh my gosh, what a difference. So if you're thinking as a parent, where is the transition? Where is it taking place? Right? We were talking about that today. It is frightening. It is frightening.
Well, I mean, and obviously, it isn't just Pleasantville. It's a problem all over the country at this point, at a level I think that exceeds where it was even a decade ago. Certainly a huge problem on colleges, college campuses, and all of our kids, just like everybody else's kids, are going off to these colleges and frequently have already developed alcohol abuse habits, and it is an extremely scary situation that not only leads to all the impacts associated with drinking too much and the risk of alcohol poisoning, but the poor, sometimes life-changing choices that people make when they're not thinking clearly. So, you know,
I know the athletic department has a contractual agreement with the athletes, right? Do you still do that? Yeah. That the athlete, once they get to, it's a
Code of conduct, yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't really shy away from the fact of having the parents sign the same contract, because really, you know, that's, you know, one of the things the Clear Choices program did is it kind of empowered the parent. And there was a lot of peer pressure among the parents that you do make that phone call if your kid says they're going somewhere, making that phone call. Is everybody going to be home? What's going on? Knowing, just being accountable. And, you know, when that athlete, I know when my kids signed their contracts when they were in the high school, they took it seriously. You know, they were like, they didn't want to be kicked off their team. Their sport was important to them. And we know how Pleasantville parents are with sports. They're pretty crazy about sports, and rightly so, I guess. But maybe if they knew that, you know, if they had some type of ownership with it as well with the student, then maybe we can, you know, try to get the parents more involved, because that accountability, I think, is what's lacking here.
Yeah.
I mean, from what's happening with our, you know, our guys are trying to do the right thing, we're all trying to do the right thing, but when people aren't accountable. And I remember sitting in those meetings, they were very annoying, I have to say. I mean, I don't know, do you remember them? I mean, you guys are too young.
I remember them.
I hated them. But you know what? It really, you know, you sit around the room and they start telling you things. I mean, we had our police department there, and Dr. Antonecchia was there, and they start telling you things, and it's like, no, that can't be. You know, am I that naive that I don't know that's going on? And then you realize, you know, all of a sudden you have some ownership to it, and you know, I don't know if we can reconstitute something like that, but
I think one of the challenges we face is reaching those parents who don't respond and
that's what
don't
Brian was
react.
saying. It's the people that didn't. That
It's the ones who don't come to the PTA meetings where they talk about it and don't, you know, don't hear all the information we're giving them. It's the people that we have to figure out a way to reach those parents.
Right. There was a lot of peer pressure, though, at the time.
At the Clear Choices time,
for the
yeah.
Clear Choices, a lot of pressure for
And
you
they were
to not
small
only
meetings.
host a meeting. They were very small in people's houses, and I mean, it got very tiring. But it was like you really, you know, you had team leaders that were trying to get the numbers, and they had a little competition of who can get the most people at their meetings, and you know, you put the pressure on your neighbors and your friends to just come and listen, and you know, I think it helped at the time. It just really helped.
I think the parents who came, you know, I would go and see Lois Winkler and her recalcitrant daughter who ended up at Oxford. So
See, that's what
I'm just not
happens.
sure.
So
Right.
that's what happens. You go to a Clear Choices meeting.
Yeah, right. But I'm just not
Just
sure
add
you
that in
reach
there.
the right demographic, the right crowd.
Well, it's funny because those people will go to a college, a meeting that you have, how to fill out a college application, how to get your kids video seen at their sports video seen at a school.
Yeah.
They'll go to those meetings, but they're not going to go to meetings that are going to, you know, help the health and welfare of their kid.
But you
Maybe
know,
we'll
it's-
disguise them.
When the Clear Choices ended, cell phones were still not in everybody's hands. You know, parents have been taken out of the equation now.
That's true.
For pickups and drop-offs. And these kids, we don't all have each other's parents' phone numbers. So if just to gather to get each other's cell phone numbers.
Great idea.
You know, and these kids can text and say, there's no one at so-and-so's house, and be there in a couple of minutes. So we have to
We
appreciate
had
the new
cell
technology.
phones. They were just this big.
But those were meetings, because you used to get together with the friends of your
I don't think we didn't have
kids.
cell phones. You're right.
Right.
There was no cell phones at the time.
But it would help.
So. It's like pretty scary.
Could I just ask a question? If we, as the chief mentioned, we're going to zero tolerance or in that direction, how does that impact the code of conduct then? I mean, if a kid is picked up and taken to the police station on the weekend, is the school informed, and is that then a violation of your code of conduct so that, you know, there's real teeth to this zero tolerance as far as how it interacts back with the school?
Well,
Anybody?
I mean, well, part of it is, though, you have to have, I'm sure any legal advice would tell you the activity would have, the child, if it was on a weekend, if he was a member of a team or a member of the play or a member of a club, then those codes do fall over into those areas. But again, if it's done on a weekend and there was no nexus in any way, shape, or form to the school, we don't have a legal foothold to intervene other than from a counseling end of it. So I'm not saying you're looking at it two lenses, from a punitive end and from a counseling lens. So if we find out a piece of information that we can do on a counseling level, we will do that. But in terms of enforcement of code of conduct, unless they were a member of a team or that had a nexus to the school, legally, that's where our jurisdiction does end.
But if that coach found out that that child, say it's a team, not the player, that,
Well,
and
we
they
have the
signed that
contracts
code.
for the play and for other
Okay,
extracurriculars as
I
well.
wasn't aware
Okay.
of that.
Yeah.
So if the, say, I'll just talk sports, 'cause that's what I know better. So
Okay.
if that coach finds out that that child was arrested, was picked up by Pleasantville Police Department, and that coach has no authority to...
If they're participating in a sport, yes, they do, sure.
Right, so they do. That would be if
But if you're not in an extracurricular, for example,
Right.
and you haven't signed a
if you haven't
contract,
signed that. But if you're... if
No,
only-
I was asking specifically about the code of conduct, only because not so much that I worry about the disciplinary side. What I'm more concerned of is this concept of a coalition, and this concept of your actions have real consequences.
Yeah.
You know, I think the mindset of a high schooler at this point is once they're off the campus, the code of conduct doesn't apply, that they're basically immune. And if we are taking kids home as opposed to taking them to the police station, we're in fact almost, you know, in a way responsible for, or sharing, or we're enabling to a degree that kind of behavior. And I know why we do it, and we do it with the best intentions, just like everybody who enables. You know, my feeling is that if the parents begin to understand that there are repercussions to this on the weekend, and if the kids begin to understand that they're not immune and that the things they hold dear could go away pretty quickly, you begin to get a bit of a handle on this. Begin. I mean, it's not the only answer and that's the only thing to do, but I think that if we are serious about doing this, we need to tie it all together. It's got to be tied together. Legally, I mean, I know that there's information sharing issues and everything else, but I think it's gotten, with the, you know, what we're all saying here is clear choice has gone away, sort of all the safety net and ways that we could keep track of this and keep focus on the outcome and the consequences have kind of been diffused. And this is, you know, in part, you know, what the result is.
I mean, we can have, I mean, the chief could speak to this better than I. There's some situations where we're just absolutely not entitled to know in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And that's pretty much protected by law. Where we do know, and it's a code of conduct violation, and it's within our jurisdiction, we do take that seriously. However, I certainly think continuing along the road of counseling and doing more, we've often spoke about that. Wouldn't it be great to bring back, you know, the funding for Clear Choices disappeared, but again, to bring back some sort of community coalition. I like that terminology, where we could get together and give some strategies or tips, or even the simplest of things. Where the chief told me last year that, you know, marijuana today is often laced with heroin, just a little bit, and it's highly addictive, and that's what catches kids. Kids don't set up to take heroin right off the bat. they slowly got introduced to it through a little bit through marijuana. So we've had a number of evening programs in school. Now, Jesse will tell you, not very well attended though, right, Jesse? You've done a good number of them, but not very well attended. We've done them in the morning, we've done them in the evening, we've done them in the middle school, we've done them in the high school. We've had PTA forums along those lines, we've had small group settings. We will continue to do all of the above, because if you get 25 people, those are 25 important people that you have there. So we'll continue, and if there are other ways to build that coalition, Jonathan, we're open for that.
Perhaps too, we could, I know we have to keep privacy as a consideration, but perhaps we could market a little bit better how many calls that we do have.
No.
You know, we don't have to give out names, but, you know, I think parents in 7th grade think, I've got a couple of years ahead of me, and they don't. You know, that's where it's starting in 7th and 8th grade. So if we say we have 10 calls this weekend that involve kids under 17, maybe that would help us get the word out as well.
There is, and I understand the children, but I had a 12-year-old child out at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got from the parent that, well, they were just walking to 7-Eleven to get something. A 12-year-old is not supposed to be out at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm sorry, it's not okay. But the reason I just came back up is I tried something when I was a younger officer here, because I was getting children that were drinking, and I was bringing them home to their parents, and I got a lot of, well, it's only a couple of beers. Well, it's not like they're doing drugs. And that changed me, and from that point on, every time I grabbed the child, I brought them to the police station and made the parents get out of bed and come get them. And quite honestly, it worked. It helped, because now you made the parents come to the police station, and now they were inconvenienced and they were angry. So we're going to go in that direction. We got away from it a little bit, I guess. I got away from it because I got promoted and moved kind of a little bit away from patrol. But that's one of the things that I used, and it definitely, when I was a police officer, helped. And that's what I'm going to instruct my officers to do. Get the parents out of bed. Come in. Come see your child. It's going to have to be.
You know, Chief, my day job, I work at the probation department, and I get all the pre-sentence investigations for the whole county. And I think Pleasantville would be stunned to know that on Christmas Eve, one of my officers is going to pick up a Pleasantville resident at the Westchester County Jail and drive that person to rehab, where they will be for the next 18 months. Now, I wonder if, looking back at the history of this person, right, if they were one of those parents, you know, who didn't want to deal with you, who didn't want to hear it, who didn't want to listen. I do think that we got to get to the people other than the 25 people who show up, because we had Mr. Veach in last year. Gut-wrenching presentation. Man who lost his son has now committed his life to doing this kind of work, telling people don't be like I was and be surprised. You know, anything that we can do to remove the surprise, I think as a community we have to come together and do that. So I know what I'm doing Christmas Eve, you know, and that's real, and I don't think that most people in Pleasantville hear that enough.
Right.
So I know exactly what you mean.
I think this is step one, that we're talking about it again, that the police department is going to be very proactive, that the school board, the village board, that we're all really on the same page with this. I hope the media gets involved and gets on the same page with this, because I don't want one of our parents to be the one that's going around talking to other school districts and to other youths about losing their child. I don't want it. I don't live in Pleasantville. I live very close to Pleasantville, but I care about this community. I care about the children. I coach basketball, football. I care about children, and I see it happening, and I see something very tragic in our near future, and I can't allow it to happen. So thank you all for getting on board with this.
Thank you. I just have one other thing to add, really, and when I was growing up in town, actually, the Clergy Association and the youth groups were very active in dealing with this issue, and they had a lot of events going on for people in high school, and it was very, very effective, and one of the things I think we should try and do is reach out to the Clergy Association and see if there are, you know, different interfaith activities that they could do and help to talk, because they reach a certain amount of children through their services, and I think that can be an effective way also, because in those groups there's a certain amount of peer interaction, and it could be helpful.
All right, thank you for all of that, and
And one other thing, and while we're on the subject of children, we have Stacy Tedrow here, and she's the New York State coordinator of the Bully Project, and maybe we can have her come up and talk a little bit about that before we
Because
completely
again, it's
move on.
about community, and it's about children, and it's about making good decisions, so.
Welcome, Stacy. Thanks for coming.
Hi. Sorry. It really is a pleasure to be able to speak with you, and I'm very honored to be invited. It is actually really appropriate what we just spoke about and what I would like to speak about. I'm used to speaking with adolescents, so just
You can sort of do it that way.
That means she's going to speak over our heads.
just a little bit about me. As you know, I'm a special ed teacher at the high school. I advise several clubs. I've been involved with athletics. I love teaching, though, and that's really what I love to do. And since I'm a teacher, I can't really detach from my teacher self, so I'm going to start out by asking for some audience participation because I don't like lecturing. It's not really my style, and I would prefer that. That's how I go about it. So the question that I kind of have is when you hear the word wellness, what you think of, like what pops in your mind when you hear the word wellness? Does anyone have any feedback? Wellness.
Given the conversation we just had.
Yeah.
Well, most people, it's physical well-being.
Mental
and physical
Mental
well-being.
Mental health, dealing with, okay, those types of, what if I said social and emotional well-being?
Sure.
Sure.
What kind of images come to mind or what pops in your mind?
Security, confidence,
Safety.
Yeah. And that's
Dealing
kind
with
of,
others.
what is that?
Dealing with others.
Absolutely, definitely. And that's kind of where I was going with this when I was thinking about how to really spur this movement. I'm not from Pleasantville, I'm from Suffern in Rockland County, and my town is very different. It's a lot bigger. We don't have the small community feel that Pleasantville has. But when I first started working here, I was quite amazed at the rich amount of resources that are available here. When you go up and down the main drag, you see a lot of businesses, nonprofits, you see a lot of restaurants, you see a lot of local hangouts, and you see a lot of community leadership places that I think the kids use and sometimes don't use. But with that being said, we have a great place to start, at least, that we have all these resources here and we really can just build on them. So I have advised SAD, the SAD Club, as well as Stand for the Silent, which was an anti-bullying initiative by Kirk Smalley, who came to our district last year. Have most of you seen the Bully documentary? It was quite an amazing experience, and we actually showed it with the kids at the high school. We brought them to Jacob Burns, and they were able to see it. I started with the Bully Project way back when the film actually just came out. It was produced by the Weinstein Company and directed by Lee Hirsch. And his main purpose was to create this thing called the Bully Project. So I actually began following him on Facebook. I really became quite invested in what his project was and talking with him. I actually was able to talk with him. I met him at some conferences. And I really just promoted his causes through Facebook myself. He put an ad out to see if there's any way to bring communication together using social media, which is one of the biggest outlets for bringing people together. And he put a post up about regional coordinators, if you want to be a regional coordinator. So me being from New York, I said, yep, click for New York. I would love to be regional coordinator. New York is quite big, so I figured my chances are really slim. But it came back that I was picked as the regional coordinator, which is no easy feat for New York because Lower Hudson Valley and Buffalo are just a slight bit of a distance. So it's hard to get people to be able to interact, but that's where social media breaks that barrier. So we have had conversations, we've had interactions where we bring people from upstate, from downstate, from left, right, wherever you are, to have a conversation. And I wanted to share with you one of the recent posts that I find are the hardest to deal with. They're the ones that I don't have answers to, and I'm not a self-proclaimed anti-bullying guru. I just know what has worked for me. I have my own past history with bullying, and I know what has worked for me. I know what has worked with some of my kids, but I don't know all the answers. But This one woman named Barbara said, "We are trying in Waverly, New York to stop the bullying, which goes on day in and day out. It's reported, and when my son goes to school the next day or the day after, it's worse. He has said, 'Mom, I'm going to explode. I can't take it anymore.' This has been going on since 7th grade, and he is now in 10th grade. He is 15, learning disabled, and is on the level of a 1st or 2nd grader. We have the Below Facebook page and need help with what to do. We want to start some kind of program or something in our district, as well as the ones right across in PA. What can we do?" So I don't have a lot of answers for Barbara because I don't know her context enough. But what I was able to do is connect her with some people near Waverly who might be able to help her. And that's really what it's about. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is to promote through this project things that we can do locally, a little bit bigger, and a little more globally. I've actually talked with the person from Southern California, because California is so big, they get 2 regional coordinators, a north and a south. So I've spoken with them and seen how can we create some kind of coalition, actually, to kind of bring together our ideas. Even if we're on separate parts of the U.S., we can still do things together. So that's one endeavor, which gets me into my kids. So we have a new club. It's a merge of SAD and Stand for the Silent, and it's called Climate. Being an English teacher, everything is about acronyms. I teach through them. So it's community leaders inspiring meaningful advocacy and teaching empathy. Quite a mouthful, but in a nutshell, it really is the word climate. It's creating a climate of social and emotional well-being. And I have 6 of the most amazing kids that I could possibly ask for. And it keeps growing. We keep on getting another friend to come on in. And I actually read my speech to them earlier, and they said it was fantastic. So the rest is quite a doozy for you. But they did want their names mentioned. I wasn't sure if they wanted them, but I did say I would plug all of their work. So I did want to say Allie Genti, Nicole Gisondi, Darian Cahill, Julia Togneri, Rosie Riley, and Tess McFadden. These girls have been really awe-inspiring. They have taken a leadership role. I advise the club, but that's about it. It's pretty much them. They run it, they do everything. They go to all the administration and ask for permission to do things. They're creating the posters, they're creating the ideas, and they're the ones actually doing it. I just do the behind-the-scenes things that they don't need to be bothered with and that maybe I can only do, so just to help them a little bit. But I really want them to be leading, because these are the kind of kids that we're probably going to be seeing taking leadership roles. So they came up with their first activity, which if anyone wants to participate, you're more than welcome, selling Thanksgiving candygrams. So the idea is to create this sense of wellness in the community and the school community, whereby students and faculty can write a little personalized message about someone that they're thankful for. And it can be anonymous. You don't have to send who you are, or you could actually say, it's from me. And then we will hand deliver them the day before Thanksgiving break. And it kind of gives this sense of acceptance and respect and fun, which we all need a little bit of fun, and being surrounded by kind of positive energy. So the kids decided that this is what they wanted to start with, a really big kickoff. So I bring these ideas together, my role with the Bully Project and these kids with Climate, because I think the conversation that I was just hearing about with alcohol really touches on the idea of community and what we as a community are responsible for, what we need to do with our kids to make sure that we're having open, honest communication with them. And I think while there are these problems within the community, we also have this amazing amount of kids who are actually leading the right way. And if we can get them involved as the role models, I think that's also really, really key, because kids are swayed by their peers. And if we can sway them in a positive direction and show them good behaviors, that is, to me, a bigger motivator than punitive measures. Because you can always, my own personal philosophy is, you can change a behavior, but if you don't change the thought behind the behavior will continue to occur when the other person turns their back. I can tell someone to stop bullying someone, and they'll be like, fine, and they'll stop. But unless I've changed their thought, as soon as I turn my head, they're going to go back to that behavior. So we need to do something to really get their thought process changed. these kids are really doing great work. We have kids who are not in climate that are doing really great work. They might not have a club to put themselves in, but they're leading. We were able today to celebrate the Section 1 champions for boys cross country and football, and it was amazing how our small little school community came together to really boost them up, and it felt really good. It felt, whether or not you were on a sports team or not, you knew that everyone was there because everyone was proud of each other. And that is, I think, really important to note. Like, these small little pockets of what I consider awesomeness happening are things that we also need to focus on what is going right, and how we can make that a, I guess, direction to move in and bring and kind of elevate those kids and help them to kind of shine, give them a platform. And it's amazing, honestly. I mean, there is negative peer pressure, but sometimes positive peer pressure can also be quite rewarding. And I'm certainly invested in providing help with anything between the school and the local community to partner. But I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight. I'll tell the kids that I did a great job with their names were mentioned, and that their feedback was well appreciated. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you. That's great.
I have a question. She brought it up just at the very end, but with drinking, with the whole abuse problem, and also with bullying, how much is peer pressure involved with this? Because often one person starts, particularly in the bullying, and then everybody else doesn't know what to do, and do they continue? So peer pressure is a big part of the bullying, but also with drinking, because you're embarrassed maybe to not drink or smoke or whatever, because your friends are doing it, you don't want to. So peer pressure is a big aspect that needs to be addressed, I guess, in both.
And I know Jesse often would speak about that. I know Morgan will too, talk about what strategies to employ when you're feeling in that
When you're
situation.
feeling
It's
it.
part of our health programs. It is part of decision making, and you're just hoping in that adolescent mind some of it clicks in when it needs to.
Or they
at that
stop and
particular
say, I'm not
moment.
going to do that.
Right.
All right, I thank you all for that. I think that was a good discussion, and really the first of many that go on both behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, because there's lots of work to do on all fronts. So, next item on our agenda is a report on the farm market. Peter Rogovan is here, president of Foodchester, and as he's coming up, I can report the farm market is winding down its outdoor activities, and under Foodchester's leadership has just been a spectacular summer and fall. And have I got my numbers right to say that in the American Farmland Trust voting, Pleasantville is number 1 in New York State?
We are number 1.
31 in the United States. So
We're not the biggest, we're just the most liked. And I was a little concerned when you started by saying that Foodchester was winding down. We're just getting started. I'll be unusually brief. I think the farmers market.
Thank you. That's the
You're
key.
welcome. I think the getting the farmers market into the school is just a great example of collaboration and everyone working together and making adjustments along the way. We had a great first year. I think the Board of Ed took a big risk. You made a calculated risk that doing a farmers market in these assets that are really devoted to education was better than being harassed by me every day and PowerPointed to death, which I would have done. And I think you thought about it and you said, I'll just give him the farmer's market. We're never going to hear the end of this guy. Good choice.
I know that's how we decided.
I know. It worked for them. It works for you. Our winter market averaged 900 adults per week. We expected 700 based on the 30% formula, so we were doing 2,100 last summer. We expected 700. We became the largest indoor market within probably a 40 or 50 mile radius in our first year. Our vendors made money. They were happy. Our visitors were very happy. And we asked about it in a recent survey. Most people thought it was an excellent market. They said it's not big enough. And people came at it from different points of view. Some people said it's just too crowded. I can't get around. So they just wanted, they didn't want any vendors to go. Actually, they asked for more vendors. They said, I want all the vendors from the summer, and I want to be able to push a stroller. So, you know, and I'd advocated before for more space, you know, for the high school, but I also have come to recognize that, you know, it also needs to be easy for the vendors to get their things on wheels. I don't even know if the high school has a way to access it without stairs, and the high school is not available. But I'm relating that only because this came out of the survey, not just because I've been lobbying for it. But we're very happy in the junior high. We're very happy with the setup. We made some adjustments in our budget and our expectations. We have 7 interns in the market. 5 of them are from the district. They're doing great. They won't stop coming. It was really just a summer thing. They show up every week. We try to give them a really good experience. You know, where Steve is an ex-teacher and camp counselor, so very focused on the general principles of youth development, not just, you know, go over there with a clicker. So we try to make it meaningful for them. And I'm not going to go through the survey now. I get to do that with you guys later. I know, it's exciting. It's the best part of my yearly visits. But I will tell you this. We just did our summer survey. We have more people coming more often, spending more time and more money in our market than ever before. Our numbers are up. Our attendance is up 25%. Our vendors are making money. A couple things that surprised me from the survey. Each time we do the survey and we ask where you're from, the percent from Pleasantville is just a little bit lower. We've become a major destination market, which is good for Pleasantville because when people come, only 1 in 5 say they shop the market and go home. 4 out of 5 say they either occasionally or frequently shop in our stores. So that's all incremental. People are coming from all over Westchester, and because our overall numbers are going up, we don't really have a drop in the Pleasantville people who are going. We just have more people coming in from the outside. We ask people how long they spend in the market. You know, less than 30 minutes, 30 to 60, 60 to 90. The percent of people spending 60 to 90 minutes or more than 90 minutes doubled this summer. So people are just coming and they're spending hours there, and they love it. The last thing I'll tell you, this just blew me away. There's a stat that we measure 2 key stats on overall satisfaction. One is overall satisfaction, like how satisfied are you, and we give them a rating. And we rated 7.75 out of 9. We do a 9-point scale, which is really high. And then the Net Promoter Score, which is, would you recommend this market to a friend? Right? You give a 9-point scale, and you take the percent of people who give you an 8 or 9, and then you subtract anyone who gives you a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Right? So it could be as low as minus 100. It could be as high as 100. Anything over 30 is considered really good. We got a 90. And it's almost I can't think of any business in any industry that ranks that high. So people really like it, and they're having a good time. And actually, I guess if they don't like it, they don't come. So we don't really talk to them. And I'd be concerned if our numbers were that good and our attendance was going down, that would be a different problem. It'd be like, oh, we appeal to a very small number of people who love it, and everyone else hates it. But we're doing great. We're really looking forward to coming back inside. I know we have some details to work out in December, right? But we're good for
plays. Of course. But I think we'll sit down with Vivian and the middle school and Steve. But I do need to give a shout out to Steve Chamberlain and his men and Vivian Osowski and Patty Dwyer. We spoke on a regular basis throughout the. So it takes really the heavy lifting of a lot of people thinking about an awful lot of different problems, whether or not, and they're not problems. They're just opportunities that occur. Like we've got a 7th and 8th grade play, and you've got a couple of hundred people and a setup for that, and it has to come down and come apart and become a market the next day, and then become a site for a play again. And if everyone was aware of all of the above, then it works out fine. We figure out ways around that, and we did. But that was because of the constant communication between Stephen, Patty, myself, you, Viv. That's what made it work. People all who really wanted to make this thing a go. Yeah. So it was great. And I will tell you, being the parent of your very first intern, when Michael was home from college. Now, for those of you who know 19-year-olds, they really do like to sleep when they're off. Trying to get them up before noon takes an awful lot. But his first weekend home, I told him I was going to taste pies with the mayor up at the farmer's market, but he had to get up at 8:30. No problem. He was up. He was at the market, and he went to visit all his friends. He was thrilled.
It was good. Yeah. So thank you, and thank Michael. That was good. He was like your surrogate taster. I saw him eating a lot of pie that day. What's that about?
She was making sure it was okay.
He's a food taster. So thank you for taking that risk, and whether it was the threat of my PowerPoints or something else, we're really happy to be able to offer this to the community year-round, and we appreciate everything that you do, and Steve, and Nunzio, and it's been a really good program, and hopefully, whatever growing pains we were going to have, we got through them. We know where everything is. We've got walkie-talkies, and our Steve is ready to go. So
thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
Echo that. I can't, first off, say enough about our former Farm Market Committee, now morphed into Food Chester as a freestanding not-for-profit under Peter's direction. I think any board would die and go to heaven to have half of what these guys have produced. And I say that, I realize that the farm market creates some issues downtown. I know it creates some issues for you. The overall result of this is, first off, we're serving an awful lot of Pleasantville residents who shop there, socialize there, and benefit from all that's offered there. And we're also serving a lot of people who, as Peter said, are helping to support the local economy and staying here and doing other things. But perhaps even more than that, all of us in some sense are in the business of promoting these places that we run. And not a week goes by when in some setting completely unrelated to Pleasantville, someone will say, "Oh, Pleasantville, wow, they have an incredible farm market. I went there 2 weeks ago. I was blown away."
That actually happened to me this week in Chicago. Someone came up to me after I gave a talk in Chicago and said something about the Pleasantville Farmers Market, said they'd heard it was really good, they'd read about it somewhere. I said, "Are you from Westchester?" He said, "No, I'm from here."
Yeah. Well, it's funny, shameless plug on behalf of our new theater organization, Arc Stages, down at the end of Wheeler Avenue, had the first weekend of its performance of Urinetown. Also next weekend, get to arcstages.org and buy tickets. A couple of the actors come from Manhattan, and one of them, who's a guy about my age, said, "Gosh, I got here early for rehearsal, and I stopped at the farm market, and I thought, am I in Union Square? I thought it was in Pleasantville." And, here's a guy who normally shops in Union Square. So that might be a little hyperbolic, but not much. So,
all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Shane tells me it's time for Austin to change tapes. Brief delay while we switch tapes. Welcome back. That was a brief delay to change tapes. Next item on our agenda was a discussion of our paperless agenda initiative. And we can just let you know what we've been doing on our side of the table. I don't know whether you guys are thinking in a similar way, but all of us have been all these years burdened by stacks of paper, not only a big administrative cost and effort to keep it all flowing, but also a tough venture for all of us to keep the stuff we need and to keep it accessible. And so we've looked around at a bunch of different ways in which we might go to a more paperless solution for our agendas, and at the same time try to provide more of the material that ends up in our packets up online so that members of the public would have access to the same backup that we have. Looked at a couple of software solutions, and some of our neighboring communities have bought subscriptions to agenda and minute management programs. And in the end, we decided to go low end, and I think it's been working pretty well, fair to say. Low end meaning we issue the agendas and the backup in PDF form by email, and each of us is picking that up in our own way, iPads, computers, whatever. We don't have an IT department and didn't want to get into the business of having anybody be responsible for all of this, nor did we want to be responsible for individual trustees' technology, and some people are Mac, some people are PC, some people are tablet, whatever. So the nice thing about it is the PDF solution has worked out well. Some of us bookmark it and look at it in certain kinds of apps. Some of it just looks in the raw PDF. It's worked out to be a great benefit to us, and I would also say that, speaking personally, I was just interested in something. I wanted to pull up some data about Toll and Benchmark that I could quote tonight when we get to that section, and it's all there, available to me all the time. So obviously confidential materials had to be treated differently, but I would have to say that at least so far, the low-end, plain old PDF solution has worked out pretty well. We've been thinking about some technology upgrades in our meeting room here so that we can do a better job and make it easier for people to, pop up a presentation and for us to see it as well as the audience. At the moment, we have a somewhat long in the tooth projector, and we pull down the screen and move the chairs, and we go sit in the audience, and then we come back, and it has a certain homespun quality to it, but I wouldn't call it the most professional operation. So, clearly more and more and more of what we do, and more of the stuff that people would like to show us is available in electronic form, and so we'll be moving towards that. But Brian and I went to a neighboring communities meeting to see what they were doing, and they have bought into a proprietary software program, and as it sort of morphs its way through each agenda item, it pops up on the screen. But again, looking at a 4-page intermunicipal agreement on a 60-inch LCD is kind of a low-end proposition anyway. So it's kind of an acid test of your audience if you actually want to read a 4-page intermunicipal agreement. So I would say it's worked out well for us, and we're all carrying around less paper. And Patty, have we spent less? What do you think?
Well, we're more efficient.
Yeah.
Whether or not we're more
Right.
cost effective, the jury's still out. We only started about 4 months ago, but we certainly have freed up a lot of time.
The police no longer arrive at our door every Friday night to drop the thing off, which we somewhat regret, although at various points over the years, various people's kids have. I recall John Nona's son at his retirement dinner saying that every Friday night he thought, are they coming for Dad's packet or are they coming for me? I repeat that because he himself said it in a public setting. And
He's now an officer in the Air Force.
and a master's in engineering.
And he's an engineer, yes. On submarines.
May want to mention how the board was provided a stipend for the technology.
Right, there were some hurdles that you had to...
Yeah, at one point we considered the question of issuing everybody some piece of technology, an iPad or whatever. Not everybody wanted the same thing, and added to that, we didn't want to get into the business of who has what and whose problem is it when it doesn't work and whose problem is it when the dog eats it. Do we need to get it back when you leave the board and all of that sort of stuff. So in the end, we decided to provide a $750 stipend once per 3-year term, and people either buy a new device for that purpose or apply that to their own technology. There certainly are some issues that each of us individually has to decide about our willingness to commingle our official life with our private life, with the potential for things being foiled.
Sure.
I think everybody can make their own choice about that. And as I say, we're careful about confidential materials in a different way. So,
how is that dealt with, confidential
well,
materials?
some of that we're just going to do on paper. First off, don't want confidential materials on a device that gets stolen or that somebody accidentally leaves on the train or whatever.
Right.
I think we probably have less of that than you do. You have more
300
confidentiality
employees.
issues with many more employees and many
1,800
kids.
kids. And
Right. So
special education
right.
needs.
So
They're very.
I think our basic guideline is we're pretty careful about not wanting stuff that has a significant confidentiality component floating around on 5 different people's iPads or computers or whatever. So again, it's not that big an issue for us because we'll go some weeks in a row without any of that material. So. We all still get paper mail, and that gets, we distribute that when we're at the meeting. But I would have to say the best thing about it from my standpoint is all that stuff that I know I have, somewhere in the stack is now reachable and searchable and available to me, especially the stuff for projects like the benchmark and the toll proposals, which we'll talk about shortly, where we're accumulating literally hundreds of pages of stuff. We're obviously not going to be carrying it back and forth to every meeting, but also not necessarily able to, search it for the piece we need. So it's been a good thing, I would say.
Yeah, fantastic.
And I don't, at least thus far, for a moment, regret the sort of low-end invent your own solution approach to it. In part, you guys have a better IT infrastructure than we do. but we don't have anybody to support all these devices, and so everybody uses the device they're happy with and be comfortable with, and it's worked out quite well.
Great,
So,
thank you.
I went from the regular iPad to the mini,
Okay,
and
I
that
see
has
that.
pleased me no end.
Did you look into a solution for confidential, like putting it up on like a Dropbox cloud or something like that with a read-only option so that you can't download it to the actual device? And you could
I'm sure that
potentially time it out so that if it's on your
Right.
screen, it actually gets timed out within a certain period.
I mean, that's a thought. I actually use Dropbox myself for the stuff.
Right.
I dump it all in Dropbox so it's available on all my devices. We haven't really looked at that again, in part because we just don't have that much stuff.
Right.
You guys may have that every meeting at some level. So your issues are a bit different than ours. And, matters involving the police and the like don't make it into this system at all. So.
Sure.
But, for the resolutions and the backup material and the endless pages of stuff that support all of that, it's been great.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
Great.
I do know, some other communities have spent, the community we've visited, I think, is spending on the order of $30,000, $40,000 a year for a subscription to this document management program. It does lots of stuff, and it's got lots of good stuff attached to it, but again, it sort of felt like, hitting a pin with a hammer for us.
Right, yeah.
Could I just ask Patty one question? For the support staff, does it take a lot more time?
No,
Or is-
no, it actually takes a lot less time.
Okay.
Copying all the agenda material, setting aside, we have one large copier that does the yeoman's work for all of the departments here at Village Hall, so there's always a need to set aside time to copy for agenda material, and that just queues up everybody else for the day. So this is a lot simpler. It's certainly a lot more efficient, and we found it to be very easy. And as the mayor said, very appropriate for the type of business agenda we have.
It dovetails. We've made some investments with Munis, which is the municipal accounting system that we use to move to a more paperless environment for that. I mean, at the moment we have quite a stack of stuff that is associated with every payment, vouchers and receipts and all of that. It all gets stapled together. You end up with stacks of stuff. We're moving now. Bought the module that allows us to do that electronically, and we're now able to receive a lot of payments electronically, and more are coming that way. And we clearly see just as we all see in our private lives,
Sure.
The likelihood that accounts payable clerks will be able to be doing different stuff now because there's just less of that to do. It all flows through more easily and gets matched up with a purchase order and vouchers and all that very quickly. So we're well along on that, and I would also say one of the primary benefits is now this stuff is in digital form, and a lot of the stuff that the community would like to see, or in some cases just know is available in the event that they did want to see it, is pretty easy to give them, whereas it used to be quite a project. So,
Great. Thank you. Very helpful.
We'll move to the next.
all right. So our next subject was an update on real estate development activities, and that's sort of a long story that I will try to make as short as I can. I think the overview story is that Pleasantville is proving to be a very attractive place for potential development, and that is an extremely good piece of news for all of us. That doesn't mean that every suitor we encounter is appropriate for us or that we should say yes reflexively, but I can tell you with great confidence that there are an awful lot of people, both small business people interested in new businesses or single buildings, all the way up to the level of investments in the tens of millions on our plate right now. So that is, I think, a very good vote of confidence in what all of us do, and certainly a very big vote of confidence in what you guys do, and the reputation of the school district as a linchpin of the desirability of a community. So as we have talked in the past, and as you now all see, the Henkel Company is well along with their project converting the former MLA building into their U.S. distribution headquarters as well as the headquarters of their U.S. sales and administration operation. A bunch of people have asked me whether there's something else there. Aren't there going to be any windows? And the answer is yes. The building is on exactly the same footprint that the original MLA building was on. The piece they have built already is the warehouse piece. There is a quite attractive and rather sleek office wing that is going to be built on the front. In fact, if you take a look, you'll see the footprint of the former office wing from MLA is still there and yet to be built on. That ended up a bit behind the schedule they hoped to be on because they spent an awful lot more time and as well as quite a bit more money doing some foundation underpinning in various places. So what they are looking at right now is the hope that they can move into the warehouse piece by the end of the year and then complete the office wing and move into that sometime in the later spring. So that's moving along well. As I've already reported, they have been already good corporate citizens and have already signed an agreement with us that will allow us and you guys to use the parking lot adjacent to Parkway Field. That, for the benefit of those who don't know, is actually part of the now Henkel former MLA property. The village doesn't own it. We've always used it at the pleasure of those owners, and it's going to get repaved and restriped and relit, and the circuit will be run over to us so that we have control over it. Henkel will only take it back on the days of their sample sale, which is also a popular thing. So I can't say enough about them. They have been great, and I think it's a very, very happy result for the village of Pleasantville, taking that property, putting it back in the productive world with a net of only about 75 employees and 2 trucks in, 2 trucks out every day. It's a pretty low impact operation. So amid that, we have lots of commercial building permits out for lots of smaller ventures. A lot of people ask about the derelict and incomplete structure across from the firehouse on Washington Avenue, and there is some significant movement there, and we have reason to think that there may be a deal for a buyer on that building soon. Also a long tortured story, but that building was ultimately went into foreclosure and was the subject of quite a number of lawsuits having to do with family and loan entanglements. And as the result of that, it was very, very hard to get the banks that were fighting about who was going to lose the least amount of money to let go. So some hope that we can see some progress there. On the major front, the 2 big pieces that are before us right now are requests for zoning changes, one for the former Baker property site on Washington Avenue, the 2 low sort of 1950s style office buildings that have been vacant for about 5 years. That project is a proposal from the Toll Brothers Company to build what is now 68, am I right? They've reduced the number of units a little bit, 68 townhome style homes that would be fee simple ownership, not condominium ownership. That's important to us and to you because condo ownership provides substantial tax reductions. Condos, long story, as you probably already know, are not taxed based on their actual market value. The result is that a freestanding homeowner and a condo owner who have equivalent market values do not pay the same taxes. So this would be fee simple ownership. We have a 10% set aside per the recent legislation we passed for affordable housing. So whatever number it is, 68 units would produce 7 affordable units as part of that. That requires a zoning change because the site is currently zoned for campus office use. But we are well along in the discussions. The applicant has provided reams of material. All of that stuff, for anybody who wants to dig into it more deeply, is available at our website, pleasantville-ny.gov. Stacks of stuff. And I would say that at this point we've got just about everything that the applicant is required to give us, and we're vetting that on our side of the table with our hired planning consultant as well as our legal consultant. And again, for the benefit of those watching, the costs of those consultants are borne by the applicant. It ought not to be and isn't the responsibility of the taxpayer to pay for the review of that. So, but those are consultants who work for us, for the village, and we'll be working our way through that. The toll project has been not without some opposition. Foxwood Condominium has sent us a long letter expressing opposition for various reasons, and we have gotten some comment here and there from various other people. And we obviously take that seriously and are looking at all those issues quite carefully. One of the problems that we have there is a stormwater problem, and separate from the other impacts that the toll project might present, it would appear, based on the applications they have made, that this project would substantially improve the stormwater situation in that area, and so that would provide some relief to the homeowners who are on the opposite side of the street. They provided us a potential school student generation study. That's also on the website, and maybe you guys already have it. I think it came back with a number of 20 students, something like that. That's based on an independent analysis by their consultant based on what they see to be comparable units. I would say that based on some local experience, that number might even be a little bit high. These are expensive units, anticipated to be in the $600,000 and $700,000 range. They're fairly big units, all with two-car garages, but about half of them are what Toll calls their active adult format, which, as we each approach this age of thinking about what's next.
Staying out of this.
That's right. You're younger than I am. Is a format that provides the master bedroom on the same floor as the living room and kitchen. And I know from conversation with real estate agents that is a residential product that has a lot of demand and very little supply in Pleasantville. So interesting stuff. The other piece that's on the radar screen is a proposal from Benchmark Senior Living for the wooded parcel north of the Methodist Church on Bedford Road, just past Maple Hill. That has been a very controversial project. It is a proposed 80-unit senior assisted living project that would be built on that site. Neighbors have been concerned about lots of impacts. One of the concerns they had was about the access to the site, which was originally proposed to be through the church property. Benchmark and their consultants have worked out what they report to be a deal that has been vetted by New York State DOT to provide a new curb cut, essentially a new winding driveway that goes through the retaining wall, so that the site would have its own driveway and would not be distributing traffic onto Maple Hill. So again, the site plans and renderings are all up at pleasantville-ny.gov. There is also a flyover video simulation that they did, which we have up. Is that up on the website now, Patty?
No, it's not.
Okay.
We had trouble with the site today.
All right, but it will be soon.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, it's obviously a schematic, but it gives people an idea. There's no doubt it's a big zoning change and one that we're looking at pretty darn carefully. I can report that the economic impacts that both of these projects have proposed to us, and these numbers have to be vetted, would be a gross tax contribution per year of about $415,000 from the Benchmark project. And in the case of the toll project, based on about 68 units, something in the neighborhood of $725,000 a year in taxes to the school district, and perhaps $400,000 to the village. So the net of those two things, if they were to be approved in the form that they were applied, would be a potential tax benefit of in the neighborhood of $1.5 million all in to all taxing jurisdictions. So I can tell you that we've gotten...
Plus the one-time recreation contribution per unit at
Toll Brothers.
Toll Brothers site, yes.
Our code requires that new projects, which are going to then generate new impacts on our recreation resources, pay a $5,000 fee per subdivision, and so that would be over $300,000.
And so that wouldn't apply to Benchmark because...
That would not apply to Benchmark.
Doesn't, but
For the
Peter,
others,
I
right.
also think that the number that you quoted as far as students, I think that was high.
Was it?
I thought I remembered
Yeah, when they
12.
redid
Colleen
the units,
remembered
I think that
13.
said 12 or 13.
Okay, you're probably right.
20.
However, if you look historically back through Pleasantville, I mean, I remember growing up when they did the whole country club development. People were screaming and yelling that it was going to bring in too many students to the school. currently, I believe right now, there are 7 students from that development. And it is fee simple, which is a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, one point, I've had a chat with a bunch of real estate agents just about the sort of lay of the land and the way such a thing might fit into the Pleasantville market is, by and large, units at that price, especially with full boat fee simple taxes, that the typical family is interested in spending that same money and ending up with a house and a yard. It tends to be an older childless couple or a couple that is away a lot that is more interested in a townhouse style. Obviously, everybody makes their own choices. Who knows how it all plays out? But I do think that, from our standpoint, and happy to hear any comment you all might have, the impacts on the schools, obviously there is no impact for the senior assisted living from the standpoint of school enrollment, and the impact on the schools for total appears to be quite modest, and certainly quite modest in comparison to something in the neighborhood of $700,000 potential annual tax revenue. So,
is there any sort of timeline in terms of the process and when these decisions might be made?
Well, we're moving into a phase here of having our consultants now vet all the stuff that has been given to us, and I think it's fair to say that we may be in a position to be making the secret determination, that's the State Environmental Quality Review Act determination about impacts, about whether an environmental impact statement is required in sometime in the next month or certainly in the next 2 months, and that would presage then a public hearing. Again, it's going to depend a bit about how the board starts to view all this. We're under no requirement to accept these as proposed. We could reject them out of hand, we could accept them as proposed, or we could accept them with modifications of any kind. All that material is up there, and as I mentioned, Toll has generated some positive feedback and some negative feedback, likewise on the benchmark project, but certainly the benchmark project has been a source of a significant concern by the neighbors, and so that's fully understood.
Is the village board the lead agency on both projects?
We are the lead agency on both.
Uh-huh.
It's a coordinated review with the planning commission, which would then get the projects for site plan review, and we have already referred them once and will do so again.
Okay. Did Benchmark give you any indication on the longevity of residents at that facility?
They have. They operate. There are different levels of assisted living and different categories, and that has to do with your licenses. They have a fairly high level of assistance, although it is not a nursing home. If someone arrives at the point where they need nursing care, they are no longer suitable for that. But the average age of their residents is in the higher 80s, and the average tenure of a resident is less than 2 years. That's right. That's based on their experience at some of their other facilities. I've got those numbers right, don't I, Pat? I think that's about right. Again, it's a memory care. There's a memory unit. There's a memory care unit, which
They have about 20 people in the memory care
for
unit.
people in early stage Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Right, sure.
And the units that they build, and Benchmark has a pretty big footprint in New England, I guess about 40 projects that they operate, are apartments, but they have kitchenettes. They don't have a stove, so you have a refrigerator and a microwave and a hot plate,
Is
but no
it
stove.
only assisted living, or is there independent as well?
Only assisted.
All
Only assisted.
assisted living.
Right.
Oh.
So, and there certainly has been discussion, and we're continuing that discussion with our rescue squad about what the impacts might be, what Benchmark reports that they would do, and indeed what they do elsewhere, is retain a private ambulance service for most of their needs, and the local volunteer corps would get called only for emergency purposes. But again, we need to vet out what that might, the impacts that might be.
And they're doctors. I mean, they would have to have doctors.
Well, the one of the services that Benchmark provides, and it's a fairly expensive way to live. They have two things. One is they provide transportation services, and the other thing they do, and no certainty exactly how it would work out here, but their typical model is that they build a medical office suite in the building. They don't operate it, but they lease it to local geriatric physicians who are there in some of their facilities. That's their main office. In some others, they are there, whatever, 1 or 2 days a week, so that people who choose that doctor as their caregiver can see them right there. So.
Because if they're assisted living, they have to have more on the property because
They're not,
they can't.
they're not like, it's not
get
like
out.
they're in a nursing home.
No, I understand.
It's not,
I know
there's
it's-
studio
Right.
apartments, there's
Right, I
one bedrooms,
understand.
there's 2 bedrooms. Sometimes there's
Right.
couples living together.
Right.
And they have the dining room that they
Right.
eat in, and
Patty, you have to switch your tapes.
you have to switch your
okay.
tape now, Patty.
Thank you.
Larry, if you just press eject. We're not going to cut camera, though. We're going to keep going.
So, I mean, I think I think I can speak for all of us in saying that we're pleased at the idea of that use and that service being available in Pleasantville. The question is whether that location
Right.
is suitable for it. So,
That's when you live right, Colleen, you live right across the street, that's a funky spot for a driveway. It's not too bad. I walk that
No,
almost.
I mean, they've done, I will say Benchmark has been incredibly receptive to
Yeah.
anything that we've asked for.
Yeah.
As far as visuals, I think to help us envision it. They've done extensive traffic surveys. So, the concern of that neighborhood, as far as that goes, was that the cutout not be coming through Maple Hill. And so, they went to the DOT, and I think I'm not the only one that was surprised that
I
it
agree.
seems that they've got the go-ahead to put that cutout. So, I think, they've been very responsive to what our concerns have been. So, we have to see. We still have some more things to review, but we're getting there.
That's great.
I just want to also mention, at the last meeting, the last village board meeting, it's the October 28th, they did present their video, the flyover
Right.
video, and that is up online. If people wanted to go to that, it's the October 28th meeting. PCTV76.org. You go to the the government section, and under village meetings, it's there.
I also, on the toll project over on Washington Avenue, they provided in their visual impact analysis some renderings of how they envision the project would look along Washington Avenue day one, and also at 5 and 10 years in as the trees start to grow. So it gives you a better sense of what the impact might be.
See,
in
that's
both those
kind of
cases.
nice because it's a high hill and then
Right.
quite flat. So why does Foxwood have a problem with the Toll Brothers?
I mean, I wouldn't presume to speak for them, and they have a detailed letter, which I'm happy to send your way. I think, for those who don't have a sense of the lay of land, it's a hill, and Foxwood rises up on one side towards the crest of the hill,
Yeah.
and this project, the Baker
on the
property is
down.
on the other side. There are some Foxwood townhouses that are at the crest of the hill that look down the other side. So certainly there's some visual impact attached to that. But they're also looking down at the flat roofs of 2 office buildings right now.
Which are very ugly.
One of the things people have to realize, and I don't say this to, presuppose that either of these things should be approved in their current form, but if, for example, the 2 office buildings were to suddenly have an infusion of cash and new roofs and new windows and new HVAC, all the things that I think have pretty conclusively been shown to be uneconomic in the current environment, those 2 buildings have the potential to be, the site of 300 or 400 employees who would be coming every morning and leaving every night. So one of the things, and we certainly saw this with the old MLA site as well, is that it's easy to get used to the way it is when a site is empty and vacant, and that sort of starts to become the new baseline. And obviously, any activity that repopulates it feels like a negative impact. I get that, and I understand that, and nobody's unsympathetic to that, except that from where we sit and thus indirectly where you sit, it is crystal clear that if we are disinterested in any form of development, the tax base will slowly dwindle, as it has slowly dwindled over a period of 30 or 40 years, and the distribution of the tax burden will be increasingly pushed towards the resident, and you end up with the high taxes that we all pay. That doesn't mean that we should or will say yes to every comer who has money in their pocket. But by the same token, I will say, and I say with conviction, that regardless of how you feel about either of these projects, it should be a source of satisfaction and pride that these two companies want to make these investments in Pleasantville. I mean, in the case of Benchmark, and again, these numbers have to be vetted, they indicated to us at their last meeting that their total project cost would be about $35 million to build that project.
I just wanted to add a couple things, actually, because, you know, the school district doesn't have the ability to expand its tax base. You know, we don't have any ability to do that, and so the village and the town, since the school district is in both, is the only way that that can happen for us. And I can say that recently you've had a couple sales. You sold the rec center, put that back on the tax rolls, or will be, and also the train station. And every little bit helps. So those are two more
Right,
properties that are owned by municipalities.
The sale of the Iron Horse building has generated a lot of question, and let me just sort of address a couple of those issues too. That building, as you know, or perhaps you don't, was originally owned by the railroad and came into the ownership of the village in the early 60s at the time that the grade crossings were changed and the railroad canyon was built. The village has owned it since the early 60s and used it in various ways, its last incarnation being the bookstore on one side and a grim village meeting room with pink vertical blinds on the other side.
Yes, I remember.
You remember that? Yeah. There are some things you're not sorry to see leave.
Yes.
At any rate, about 15 years ago, as you all know, Phil and Kathy McGrath proposed to lease the building and invest in it and turn it into a first-class restaurant, and it all looked a little risky at the time. And the village board at the time, involving one of us, agreed to that, and I think what was a visionary move. Phil and Kathy built the restaurant, and it's been a great success and a linchpin of our downtown. That said, they also had a rather favorable lease, reflecting the risk they took in the early going and the investment they made into the building. And at the point at which Phil and Kathy decided to sell the business to one of their investor partners, who's actually a partner of theirs in the Pony Express and also in the Seahorse, the new owner of the Iron Horse Grill restaurant expressed an interest in buying the building. So we got the building appraised and entered a negotiation with the new owner, a gentleman named Andrew Economos, who has been an extremely helpful person already. He was interested in buying the building. A couple of people said, well, why didn't you offer that up for public bid? We're not required to, but the other piece of that was that it is a building that is occupied by an owner with 15 years remaining on a very favorable lease, and that very favorable lease obviously has a significant impact on its investment value. So if somebody else buys it as an investment, puts it back on the tax rolls, the favorable lease didn't support a terribly high purchase price. So the result of that is that we agreed to sell the building to Andrew Economos for $650,000, which I think, based on our appraisal, is a very satisfactory price. We expect to close on that quite shortly. We have some housekeeping to do about subdividing the lots. He will end up owning the building, what's called the drip line, the projection of the roof down to the sidewalk, plus the concrete patio at the north end. We obviously continue to own the pocket parks on both sides and the sidewalks around. Building goes back on the tax rolls. Iron Horse Grill, we hope, continues to prosper for years. It will remain the Iron Horse Grill, and Economos, I think, intends to maintain a very similar restaurant over the long haul. So that is, I think, a very happy development for us, and the next time the roof goes, it won't be our problem. So.
Taxpayer likes it.
As Shane mentioned, a year or so ago, we also sold the old recreation center building to Mike McCormick and his wife, and they are in the process of renovating that in what I think will be quite a spectacular home, and a rumor has it they will themselves live in it, which is a really great result. So that's happy news. Both of those two buildings, kind of iconic pieces of Pleasantville history, have been sold with deeded easements that protect the buildings. They can't be torn down. In the case of the Iron Horse, the Pleasantville signs have to remain on the roof, and no significant changes can be made without the approval of both the Village Board and the Architectural Review Board. So both those buildings are protected. but I can also report that both owners have bought it totally in sync with that goal because they bought them as historic buildings and want them to remain so. So, happy news. Then the last piece on the list is the Maher Funeral Home site, which is on Washington Avenue near the end of our village, downtown, at the corner of Edgewood. Maher Funeral Home, and the building next to it, which years back was a hairdressing place, freestanding house, are both in common ownership, and they are the subject of a proposed mixed-use office and residential development. That would be some offices as well as 14 residential units. That project has just come to the village recently and will begin its way through the review process. The village's A1 commercial district includes that parcel. It ends at Edgewood. So that would be a significant change at that area. Again, two buildings that really have been mostly empty for the last several years. But obviously will be a significant project there and will obviously be of interest and or concern to the immediate neighbors as well.
So, I mean,
that's one singular building there? That was.
I haven't seen the layout yet. Patty, have you seen it? Is it one building?
I believe it is.
With 14 residential
14
rental units?
I believe it's 14 rental units and some offices.
Right. It's all as of right under the zoning.
Right, so it goes to, so
It's at the before
it's
the
planning, right.
Right.
So if we kind of segue from that, I mean, one thing I think it would be a very interesting year, I think, for both the village board and for the school board, because, you know, we've all been talking a lot about the 2% tax cap.
The 1.6%.
Exactly, which is never the 2%. And the fact is that this year, because of CPI, the cap is going to be lower. It looks like between 1.6 and 1.7%. And so it's really, really important in terms of this declining tax base that things are going on that might actually generate more revenue for us because we are constrained in more and more ways.
The growth factor.
Right, and it's very, very difficult because there are also other things that we need to do. And it's very hard. I mean, I don't know, maybe you want to talk about some of the mandates that you get hit with. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about ours. But
Right. I mean, I think you guys are affected by a much wider range of mandates, but you know, we're in the same boat. Obviously, we're at the mercy of the pension contributions, and we don't make the rules about how the pensions work. We weren't the ones that decided 10 years ago that employees wouldn't have to contribute after 10 years. Had that change never happened, the world would look like a different place now. So, you know, we suffer with all of that, and it is. It's funny. I've had a conversation with some people involved in the Democratic campaign and some in the Republican campaign, and said the same thing to them, which is that if you read all of this stuff that you receive in your mailbox, and come the end of the election, you will actually know less than you did before it all started, which is a sort of a statement about the way politics works. I mean, the reality is that, you know, certainly from where we sit, the idea of, you know, cutting somebody's tax bill 20% is just, it's not happening. There isn't anything that we could do.
Right.
As you may know, we went through an extended discussion a couple of years ago about our options for police services,
Right.
Not with the presupposition that we wanted to get rid of our independent police department, but due diligence to find out what our options were, because it costs us well over $4 million a year to provide the service we now have. And, you know, the reality there is, even in the grandest possible circumstance, the biggest savings anybody could possibly imagine from our options, sharing with Mount Pleasant, merging with Mount Pleasant, consolidating with the county, we might have saved $750,000 or $800,000 a year for a whole series of reasons that I don't need to bore you with now. Even those things were not options to us, but even a savings of $800,000 a year would not have changed anybody's property tax bill in a way that would have caused you to say, oh my God, it's okay, I'll stay.
Sure.
So, you know, people just have to realize there's some sense in the part, you know, of the community that taxes are so high, as well they are. I fully understand where it's coming from, but in our circumstance, we've cut and trimmed, and at the point where I think it's fair to say we're pretty lean and mean. Patty is on top of these numbers very, very aggressively, and has delivered to her eternal credit and to the credit of her department heads, a surplus every year. But the reality is we confront fixed rising costs, particularly healthcare and pensions, and a 1.6% tax cap, which thus far we've lived within it for the last 2 years. The 2% cap is just silliness. I mean, in the end, what it causes communities to do, and blessedly we haven't gotten to this point yet, is just not doing the stuff that government is supposed to do. You're supposed to be able to drive on roads that are safe and across bridges that don't fall down, and water's supposed to come out of the faucet when you turn it on. And there are a lot of communities at the moment that have put those things at risk because they were forced to try to live within a cap that doesn't make sense. So,
I mean, I think you all know, everyone sees in the news that there are public school districts in upstate New York that will probably verge of bankruptcy because of the situation, whether it's pension cost, health care, and Pleasantville, the school district, we haven't, unlike some of our surrounding communities, we haven't seen a decrease in enrollment. Our enrollment has stayed pretty much the way it's been. We've had those spikes of 7 sections, but pretty much the same. And I think, Viv, we were talking about this day, you had 28 students move into the middle school just this summer alone that we did not plan for, which on one side, some people are buying houses with families and they want to move to Pleasantville, which is really quite great. But those are costs that are very difficult to plan for at the time.
And honestly, the reality is, the only thing worse than lots of people wanting to move here with kids is the first day they don't. I mean,
Yes,
that's what this is about.
Exactly.
That's why we moved here,
Exactly. But it's tough with the 1.66.
I just, you were talking about consolidation. I just wanted to bring something up that, we as a board don't talk about very often. But one thing that's interesting, if you look at merging school districts, for example, is it's not the easiest thing to do. You have to have a vote in one community, and then you have to have a vote in another community. But one of the great things about Pleasantville is that we don't have busing. One of the problems is if you merge with another community, we'd have to have busing. So a lot of the savings that you potentially have if you merge with another school district are the busing fees that you suddenly have to pick up. Another thing is in educational law, when you merge, you have to take the most labor-friendly contract. But it's not just the contract, it's actually the most labor-friendly line of the contract. So by the time you're done taking the most labor-friendly line from each contract, gone are your savings as well. So, I mean, it is interesting, but it would be pretty hard to do, and Pleasantville and Pelham are the only 2 schools in Westchester that don't have busing. And so for us, it would be significantly more difficult because of that.
And change the nature of the community as well.
Completely.
Sure.
I think in the past, there have been like 3 times that merging was considered and it was voted down.
You had some of those interesting
Every time.
materials, or what, did you dig that stuff up there?
Yeah, Rini did actually too when we were looking at it, and many times it came into being when communities were struggling what to do with their high school. They might have had an aging high school, so this thought, could you create a regional high school that 2 or 3 communities could feed into? But over the period of time, be it Byram Hills or Briarcliff, Pleasantville, we've all solved our high school decisions about the aging facility there, but that's in the past where it came from. Right.
Well, the difficulty with shared services is it's great on paper, it's very hard in practice because nobody wants to give up control. I mean, the shared services in Pleasantville, Mount Pleasant, for example, in our community, could be things like the head of DPWs. Do we need 2 supervisors at DPW, or could we do with 1? Things like that. In the schools, Mary, do we need 2 supervisors? I mean, these are questions which, and I don't ask that to be, but these are hard questions that sort of go to changing in attitudes. And how badly do you really want it? Do we need 2 police chiefs? Do we need? And you start with some of these supervisory positions, and you start to whittle down. And the reality is, when you start to put those questions to the community, you get real pushback. People, they don't want to pay the taxes, but they don't want the services to go away either. And they don't want the first thing you hear is, we want the personalized touch. That's why we moved to the community. And it's kind of interesting when we looked at DPW or at the DPW in the sanitation department, because that's one service we could actually outsource, so we could get a kind of a competitive, real market bid and put it against our costs. And you had people from the community coming in, even though at the time we were able to winnow it down through some creative means, but we were probably paying twice what the competitive rate was. And faced with that, the union was willing to make some sacrifice in terms of changing their routes and the way they approached the job. But in the interim, there were numbers of people in the community that came in and said, oh, what's $300,000? Let's just do it. That's $50 a month. I mean, do we really want, Tony Soprano's guys showing up in our backyards, taking our garbage out? I mean, literally, those were the quotes. I'm not making this up.
He said that.
I
don't think that.
I didn't even say that. I'm quoting. So
Can I get the autograph?
It is hard. It is hard to, it's easy to talk about shared services. It's really, really hard to make it happen unless you're willing to begin to really sacrifice. Period. I mean, that's where you got to there's a sacrifice when it comes to shared services.
But don't you think, though, I mean, at our end, we often think that it's so unfortunate because people have not taken on the big issues like ERS, TRS, and the pension system.
Yes.
That we're looking at these things. I mean, to me, that these are just distractor conversations from the real issue of reform.
Yep.
And you really need real structural reform for these heavy cost drivers.
Right, and we were just talking about the rate of return on the TRS is absurd. That we guarantee an 8% rate of return and have to contribute. Whereas even and the comment was interesting that over a 25-year period, it's the return for TRS has been 9.1%. And they said, well, that's only 110 basis points over what we've promised. Well, how come we don't get that money back then?
Yeah, that just is not going to happen.
But it's, as much as difficult as the economy has been over the last 5 to 7 years or so, 5 or 6 years, the rate of return over the last 5 years is still 5.2% to TRS. And I would imagine ERS is similar, something like that, David?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but if we all made 5.2% over the last 5 years, I think we'd all be pretty happy. So,
well, you guys have started that conversation. I was very happy to have been at your meeting with the community forums, and I thought it was great, and the fact that you're engaging the community and educating them, and I think that's very important because, we could throw around acronyms all day and sob stories all day, but nobody really. What's that going to do, really, until people start to understand it and get behind it? And you've made a great effort to do that on your end. And, anyway, I'm probably going to come tomorrow as well, because, anyway, we could assist in that to just, the impact on the village as well as the school community itself, is felt also. So, but your efforts there have been really good. I just hope you continue.
I would say the biggest problem is, yes, there are village taxes, yes, there are county taxes, and yes, there are school taxes, but most people aren't looking at it in individual buckets.
I think that you have to look at that. We each have a role. Our roles are very different. And, your budget is quite large, 4 times as what ours is, for a very good reason. You're serving more people, you're under more mandates than we are, although I don't even know if that's possible, but it feels that way. If you look at the role of village government, I was getting a kick out of when the nice young lady here was asking you questions, and who answered the questions. the school board, we sat there and was like, why is
We're
she
not
asking
used to
these
audience.
questions?
We're not used to
I don't have the attorney here, I can't answer that question, so it's very funny. You just see our roles are very different, and we have to answer to that. I mean, I think that, really our role is to supply essential services and to maintain a quality of life for our residents through our recreation programs, through our facilities here, and that's our role. Really, there's really no other role for us. I mean, we have to make sure your garbage is picked up, you get water coming out of your faucet, and that you have a quality of life that you bought into when you moved here. Your role is as, or if not more important, as you take our youth and that's what you're responsible for. I mean, it's a very different role. So, where that crossover is not always as clean as you'd like it to be because of that separation of the roles. So.
There are synergies though.
Right.
Though.
We're wondering if you could have extend the school day on Friday and Saturday till, say, 11 p.m.
Well, I mean, there are advocacy synergies. No, there's no doubt about it. And we've talked about, trips up to Albany, and certainly, and I think that, we've talked about things that happened at your meeting, and you've talked about things that happened at our meeting. And I think, though the cooperation to put the message out there that we really are. I mean, yes, we have different pockets of issues that we have to deal with, but really the base arguments that are really driving from a cost standpoint are very similar or exactly the same.
Yes.
Or the cost drivers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I tell you, and it's all coming from the same place. We're all getting them from the same place, and that, if that advocacy, I don't know, the only recourse we all have is the state, like just to keep pounding at Albany, like you guys are advocating to do, if we could find something there, that would be great.
Well, one of the things we're trying to do with school districts, one of the things we're trying to do with school districts is pick a couple of things that we all agree on, so that when we go to Albany, it's not this school district highlighting these issues and that school district highlighting other issues, focusing on the same thing so that there's a consistent message being delivered in Albany.
I saw that at your meeting when we broke up into groups. That was really like concentrating on those issues that Mary had put up there.
But one problem is that the state looks at school districts and especially school board members as a special interest group, and something
as stated by our state education department.
Yes.
And one thing
is that right?
Yes.
Really?
Really.
Yes.
One
2 weeks ago.
One thing I think would be really beneficial, and I know you're a member of the Mayor's Association, is if we can get municipalities, school districts, and counties together talking about the same 2 or 3 things. So they're hearing it from villages and towns. So they're hearing it from counties. The same 2 or 3 things. If we can start to develop a message that goes across not just from school districts but to municipalities and counties, I think it'll be much louder.
How many different ways can you say mandate relief? I mean,
right.
We said it a billion. We've fought a billion times because we have state officials coming to us and talking to us, and only around election time.
I think the key thing is getting the community involved. So it's not just us sitting here.
Yes.
And they need to be inundated with calls, paper, email from many more people than just us. And
Absolutely.
I think that's the only thing that's going to move any action.
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't think it's lost on them. Unfortunately, Triborough's a problem. Pension costs are a problem. They've figured out a neat little political solution for themselves with the tax cap that we have to live under, but that they don't.
They don't.
Right, they're not capped. They, in essence, took over property taxes. It's essentially what they did. We've given them a credit card. We pay for what they tell us to on property taxes up to a certain limit. So anything that you would want to do in Pleasantville that is above that, well, that's on you, and you need a supermajority for that. And essentially what they've done is gotten a credit card they don't pay the interest on.
Right.
So
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I mean, I'd like to think, Lois, it's community outreach, and of course, it's probably the only weapon we have. They're up there concocting very creative ways to keep being reelected, and seemingly less
But if
concerned to actually solving the problem.
feel a threat, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the solution, but I think it's,
Yeah. No, I
We
mean,
have to try.
we got to keep trying. Absolutely. It's just it's very frustrating.
Absolutely.
To be sitting in our collective seats and seeing how it works in practice, and knowing what's going on. And meanwhile, the rest of the community doesn't really care. They just want results, and they're yelling at us for results. And we deliver. You guys deliver less. We've been able to over the last couple of years less than the tax cap, but how absurd does it have to get before you got, it's just not going to happen. 1.6 now, I mean, you guys may have some things that give you some relief and may help you. I'm not sure we do this year. We'll see. But it is, again, it comes to, we have an advantage, and that is we can pass the budget without having to go to
Referendum.
get it elected, or
Passed
voted
by the
in.
voter, right.
yeah.
And so your guys' approach is much more, is much a, not much more, but as much a PR effort as it is, real business
It's the only
solution.
budget
It's the
people get to
low-lying
vote on,
fruit
so
that we've all taken care of already. I mean,
Yeah.
we're so lean, we're such a lean machine that it's just thanks.
We are, but
Patty,
we need to still look, though, I think, at sharing resources. Like, if you look here in town, I think the library is such a great example of what a village and a town can do together. It's a model, really. And I think that, we've been talking forever about mandate relief. And it may happen, it may not. And if it doesn't, we're going to have to, look at not duplicating services. And maybe if we start cutting things where we need to, that will piss people off enough to call their, representatives and get a change. But I think we have to keep looking at where we can, share services.
Well, I think it's certainly fair to say that none of us covet this position enough to do whatever it takes to get reelected again.
No.
We are truly trying, I think, all of us to do what's best for the community.
Right.
We're all making so much, it's not really.
Yeah, I know.
Best interest, too.
Definitely in it for the money.
But the thing I think the community has the biggest trouble understanding, frankly, when it comes to it is, I don't understand why taxes continue to go up and services continue to go down. They don't understand that, if it's going up 1 or 2%, how is it that services are being cut? And I know in our case, every year, it seems to be that the amount the state is passing down to us is always more, or has always been more, than the increase is allowed to be.
Sure.
So we'll always have to squeeze out.
The increased costs.
Yeah.
Well, add to that, we obviously each have our...
We've got to change tapes.
Oh, out of tape?
Yep.
All right. Brief break for tape switch. Welcome back. We had a brief break again to switch tapes. So maybe just to sort of connect those last two discussions so we can segue to the last item on our agenda. I think we were talking about the public's understanding of the dynamics of all this. One piece I think that people don't quite recognize is that when the tax base drops because properties become disused and lower in value, or because people grieve their taxes, everybody pays more, even if costs remain the same.
Right.
So I don't say that to come down against anyone who grieves their taxes. That's how you keep government in their box. But the reality is, every time there is a successful tax grievance, everybody else's taxes go up a little bit to make up the shortfall. So, and that goes to the challenge we confront about thinking about appropriate development. And I certainly don't mean to export the controversy of those things to you, but it will help us if you guys can support us in the element of this, which is that, at least from my standpoint, it's crystal clear that we cannot allow the tax base to continue to decline. That doesn't mean that, we're going to turn it around like a rocket, or that we should build a 60-story tower tomorrow, but absent some development, the tax base continues to creep down.
Sure.
So, all right. Last item on.
Actually, I would say very clearly, I do support development. Now, it's your job to make that meaningful and correct and appropriate, but I do. I mean, if anyone was to ask me, I do, so.
Thank you. We may need you.
Good luck with the decision.
No pressure. We're inviting you back.
I'm right there behind you.
Glad it's ours and not yours, right?
I mean, part of the reason I say that is, someone said to me, it looks to me like the village board is going to rubber stamp anybody who comes, and to the contrary, I think all of us spend long hours agonizing over what's right, what's wrong. Any change produces some winners and some losers. Sometimes the actual winners and the actual losers aren't the ones that were predicted, but there's no question about it that if a change occurs in a neighborhood or on a site, there are people who are going to view that negatively and people are going to view it positively, and it's our job to try to sort out the options and try to make what's the best decision on behalf of the community. But the only piece I hope to communicate to everybody is the option of not accepting any development is just not an option, or we will all be grappling with ever higher taxes to the point that the Pleasantville we've come to know and love, the one that brought us here, won't be able to keep us here. We'll all move, just because it will become the kind of community where you come and spend high taxes when the kids are in the schools, and then you flee because it's just too expensive to live here. That's already happened in some ways, but blessedly, in lots of ways it hasn't. You guys prove that every year with the story of the families of the students graduating every year who have parents and grandparents who graduated from Pleasantville. So, it's a great place to live. It was never intended to be gold-plated. But the only thing worse than a place with high taxes is a place with high taxes and low services. So we're trying to balance all that, and I know you are too. So, all right. Last item on our agenda was strategic planning for facilities and fields. So I'll let you start
the
that.
school district is having a community forum on facilities. There are a certain amount of things that we are looking at. And we're going to have a community discussion about it. And then in a completely firewall discussion, the finance committee is looking at different ways to pay for enhancements that we have to make. And that will be happening later. So tomorrow night at about 8:30, hopefully, if we're able to keep it short enough in that first hour, we're failing tonight, maybe we can succeed tomorrow in terms of brevity.
This was just practice.
Okay. Much needed practice, right? We will be having a conversation, and some of the things that we're looking at are things we really have to do, such as we have a very old middle school roof for the older section of the middle school roof. I believe it's about 50 some odd years old.
It was replaced once before, but it does need to be replaced.
You want to know when? My son was in 5th grade. So, when would that be?
I don't know. 35 years ago?
You're not giving me enough information. I look great, don't I? He was the last O to go. So he was 09, graduating class of 09. So that was in 04?
That would probably be only
that
part
wouldn't
of the
be-
roof.
no, that would not be the one we're talking about.
The middle school has had many different additions and
Right.
renovations.
So
and
it might have been
different
my other
adjustments
kid.
to it, but
I remember it.
But in terms of just giving it all broad strokes, it's been a number of years. Steve has done his best on a regular basis to patch and to maintain it, but it's something that needs to be addressed. We have 3 turf fields and a track that have reached their end of life. They are 10 years old, and they get a tremendous amount of usage. We've got infrastructure issues at the, and I don't mean the word issue in a pejorative sense in any way, shape, or form, but if you were trying to put in a state-of-the-art communication system for school safety, you would be putting in a VoIP-based system where your handset in a classroom could be a telephone, could be a communications device, as well as a PA, but you need a different infrastructure for that to happen. So our elementary school and our middle school do not have that. Our high school does. We're looking at a dual vestibule at the elementary school for a safety feature. And if you walk around the campus, you'll see that we need some concrete work done. Very not too sexy project, if you will, but the nuts and bolts of work that has to take place. And we're looking at, John was envisioning in that area near where the middle school basketball courts are, do we want to do something about putting in a different set of bleachers? If any of you have been there, and I know, Jonathan, you and I have been there many a game, you commingle fans and spectators from different teams, and is there a better way? And if they're more comfortable seating for our own community that comes to watch events. So these are things we are addressing.
Right, but I would say that the forum tomorrow night as well is going to be open to what people want to bring in terms of their thoughts and ideas about the school district, besides the immediate or close-term needs that we've identified. So,
what else do you think?
How far on the priority list is the double vestibule at Bedford Road School or other security type? That's high up there.
Yes.
And the other schools, as far as security, I know the new high school's a little better.
They have a
with-
double.
They have
the
double?
others
Yes, they
have
both have
double.
doubles.
And the middle school is double already?
Yes, double.
Okay.
Right.
All
So we're looking
Great.
at
That's
we're looking
good.
at security cameras, but again, if you take a look at that, you need an infrastructure, you need more power, you need more electricity, you need more of this type of stuff, different type of wiring to power all of that. So that's what we're looking at.
You know, and then there's a possibility of even, we very often get complaints when there are games, at the high school about bathrooms there, for example. I mean, that's something potentially we can look at. I mean, basically, what we're trying to do is, develop, have a community conversation. We haven't made any decisions yet on, what we're going to do or what we're not going to do. We're trying to get input from the community, and then while we're getting input from the community, also look at, different ways with the finance committee, a completely separate conversation about how we might pay for it, Is it something we're thinking about in terms of bonding? Are we thinking about using fund balance, some sort of hybrid? So that's a separate conversation that's going on. And then when we have a priority list, we'll start to make some decisions. But as we look at these, there may be issues that affect both of us, village and school district, and it might make sense as we go through this process to see if there are any synergies, see if there are any projects that we're mutually interested in that we could potentially do together.
Regarding fields?
Sure.
I mean, we talked at our meeting last year, I think we were all pretty together that we're interested in bathrooms. That's certainly one of the field priorities for us, on Parkway.
Right,
I think we've been saying that for years. So if there was something that would involve our ability to do that, yeah, I mean, we'd be in, but I think we have to really sit down and do it. We keep talking,
The field house has definitely come up. I don't want to promote that as a priority item, but
what I'm saying is
no, I understand.
restrooms for us are a priority.
Yeah, right.
If we were looking at fields and all of that, which seems to be where the conversation
Yeah, I
is
mean,
going.
if that was a project that was brought up as something that the community wanted to address or at least explore, it would certainly be in conjunction, I think, with creating something that would be useful for the village as well.
That's a charge that we're looking to give to our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, is the fields, is the
Right.
next thing that they're going to be looking at and seeing, once we get our pool house situation straightened out, they
Right.
want to move on to taking a look at all the fields, because Soldiers and Sailors, Roselle, Parkway, and see what we can, just start to really just look at everything all over again. We do that quite often, so
Right.
that's their next charge. They haven't been charged with that yet, though.
Obviously, I'm on the ASA board as well, with that John Vamosi's here.
Vamos.
And Colleen ran for many years. I know that the subject of fees, increased fees comes up frequently. And so, in terms of either long-term contribution to certain projects, at least in terms of maintenance, we have a lot of shared services. That's something that we should talk about at some point. I know that both, just hearing from certain members of Dad's Club as well as ASO, in comparison to other communities, that the fees that are charged here are very low, in part because the field usage fees were discontinued, a few years ago. And is that a way really to get the high level users both school and district fields to pay for at least maybe long-term maintenance of projects that we may undertake either separately or together.
Well, we had a field use fee that got instituted, and I think it only existed for 1 year.
Oh,
maybe.
did it?
Was it 2?
1 year.
One.
It collapsed. It collapsed under its own weight for a variety of reasons. The first piece of it was it was a fairly modest sum that would have generated all in about $25,000 of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
But our idea at the time was that although $25,000 a year in revenue isn't enough to make any life-changing moves, it would be enough to pay the debt service on a bond that could do something pretty significant. And our idea at the time was to try to generate a source of revenue in the form of user fees that would jumpstart capital improvements. Because we were at a time when there was exploding activity in sports and more pressure for more and better facilities, not just more facilities because there was too much demand for fields, but the potential for turf on grass fields, the need for bathrooms, desire for better or different backstops, all that sort of stuff. And our idea at the time was not to use that money to supplant the taxpayers' core responsibility to maintain parks and fields, but instead to sort of use that to jumpstart capital improvement so that the people who were actually using it would pay it and could see the results, within the lifespan of their kids being involved.
Hence the bathroom at Soldiers and Sailors.
The trouble with it was, the idea was that there was a lump sum, what was it, $15 per registration, I think? So that the idea was that every time a kid registered or family registered their child for a field-based activity, there would be an additional $15 charged by either Dad's Club or ASO and be passed back to the village for this purpose. There was some dispute over whether ASO should have charged that twice, that is $30, because of a 2-season registration taking place in the fall, and some disagreement between Dad's Club and ASO and the village about how fair it was for a family that had a bunch of kids in a bunch of sports to pay it so many times. Should there be a cap? Long story short, it died because of all those conflicts and has been talked about since, but never risen yet.
The
So-
PREB has asked to look at that again, but we haven't charged them with that.
So are you saying that if we go back to fees that you want to take part of them? Is that?
Well, I'm thinking it's part of the discussion maybe for long-term maintenance.
So, well, let me ask you a question. I don't have children in the high school or in the district, but if someone is participating in a sport and they raise money, like you see on the weekends, the lacrosse kids are selling mulch and somebody, where does that go? Is that donated to teams? Does that somehow go to usage?
No, and part of the problem, if I don't mind interjecting, is something we talked about this. The one thing I don't want this conversation to end up in is that who's using more of what or where.
No,
and it's really important that I say that up front because it's like, we could go through these lists. I mean, I actually started putting together an Excel spreadsheet based on every form that comes across my desk over. And
I wasn't suggesting that. What I was saying is he's suggesting that if recreation invokes a fee, that we would somehow split it or prorate it. And all I'm saying is there some sort of system whereby users in the school athletics raise money that go towards offsetting some of the costs? We should just know that going into it. I'm not basing that on use or what team.
The kids that do raise money, they go into booster clubs that offset whether or not it's their different type of clothing that they wear or their banquet ceremonies. It's really not a significant amount of money that it would be useful in many ways for what we're talking about right now. But a lot of that, the car washes, the stuff they do, it's meant for their nuts and bolts type of activities. And it's not, correct me if I'm right, Joan, yeah, you can talk about it, but it's not a huge chunk of change. And many of them help offset costs for whether or not it's the kids going on a spring trip.
The teams that raise money through the car washes or fundraisers, the selling of the mulch, they do extensive end-of-the-year team dinners. They give the kids like portfolios with pictures, albums and stuff. They're also used for like warm-ups. Before I came here, that was part of the budget. Teams were allowed to purchase warm-ups and jackets. because the budget has been my budget has been significantly reduced. I only buy the uniforms for the kids. So any of those extra things, the parent groups, and it's not for every sport because some sports have bigger parent organizations. They're very organized. It's become a tradition. Like football's one that it gets passed down from the senior parents to the next group that come in, and that money is strictly for those things to give the kids better opportunity. The parents are paying. The parents are for the last 2 weekends paid for a coach bus for the football team to travel in, as opposed to the Chappaqua school bus. So that's where some of that money goes to make it a little bit better for the kids, to give them a better experience.
So before you leave, let's just interrupt. You got to give a plug for these extraordinary teams you guys have generated this year.
Well, we went in, and that's what I spoke about today at the assembly. League champions, you see a lot of them on the walls because it's teams of 4 and 5, and it's a lot harder to win a section when you're up against 20 schools, football 11 schools, just the nature of the sport. So it's been 22 years since we won a football sectional, and 47 since we won boys cross country. The boys cross country's leaving Friday to go up to Queensbury, New York, for their state meet on Saturday, and they're top 5 in the state. They have a shot. Worked real hard in the off season. Football, we're underdogs and proved everyone wrong. And I like to say that beating a team like Our Lady of Lourdes that pulls from multiple school districts and here 1.9 miles, I'm pretty proud of the fact that our team is representing Section 1 in the regional game in 2 weeks. So it's been, and our other teams did well. All of our varsity teams this year qualified for sectionals,
All of them.
which is a good accomplishment. So very proud of the kids. It's a great group of kids, a great group of coaches, and you can't do it without a community. And the parents really are behind and support the athletic programs, which is outstanding.
And thanks for your leadership, John. I think it's also important to note, though, when you think about our kids, because at the end of the day, we see them all, whether or not they're wearing a Dad's Club or an ASO jersey. They're our kids, and you look at between the modified and the varsity sports, at points we're up to 60% participation of all of those kids. It's huge, and it's wonderful to see kids. We started the evening with conversations about purposeful activities. I'm a big believer, a proponent of the fact, get your kids involved in sports. It's really important. It's helpful.
Well, our teams have gone above and beyond. Not many people know because it wasn't publicized, but our football team won the Section 1 Community Service Award. That's 80 schools by doing their work down for the hurricane victims, gutting houses, going down there, bringing things down. Our teams do clinics for the youth in the community, so they do above and beyond just participating in athletics. So,
and many of your teams are also scholar athletes.
Yes.
Which is a significant accomplishment.
Out of the 16 or 17 varsity teams, I believe it was 11 or 12 achieved New York State Scholar Athlete, which means they had averaged over 90%.
Right, which is really impressive.
In the classroom, yeah, that's great. And I'll have more results for that once, this fall season's over.
And you look at how many kids are involved in, say, in Dad's Club, close to 600, or the different teams on both sides. I
believe ASO is 650 in the spring and 800 in the fall, or vice versa.
Those are huge numbers,
Well, it's PSO now, right, though?
Yeah.
Pleasantville
Because
Soccer.
it's site with it, right?
Nice logo, too.
Yeah.
So, it's a community that definitely gets behind their athletics.
So you look at it, we're on,
Just
of every
listen to the parents
small
on the
footprint,
sideline.
and it's fairly obvious to all of us who live here, there aren't enough fields to support all of this, and our main turf field certainly takes a huge pounding with this wonderful level of participation and activity. So thus our problem this year.
Yeah, it was put in 2002, so it's 11 finishing its 11th year.
Right.
What time is the track meet on Saturday?
Cross country they're running at 9 a.m. in the morning.
Queensbury, New York.
Yeah, I know, it's 3 hours.
Near Glens Falls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just north of.
It's only a little over 2 hours from my house.
They used to beg kids to be on the cross-country team. They used to steal them from the soccer meetings for the kids that were like, because at the time there was too many soccer kids, and the few kids on cross-country used to go into the soccer meetings and get their friends and go, don't try it, just come out for a cross-country, you're definitely on the team. You don't have to worry about no play time or
Well, if
anything.
you get it
And that's how
every-
they big under Luke Southerden.
Well, if you ever get a chance to meet my coach, Tom Patterson, you'll understand why.
I think I met him. He was by where I live around the Nannyhagen Lake. The kids run around there, and he was marking it off one day. So I walked around with him, and I was talking to him because all the kids run right past my.
He's a gentleman through
yeah,
and through.
yeah.
Stand-up guy.
I don't know, John, with this success, maybe we shouldn't touch the fields. They're perfect.
We need new fields.
I don't know if you saw last summer, also helping Coach Patterson, who did a fantastic job, is my good friend Kieran Moran, who ran ran a CYO program for track this past summer. So, and he had over 120 kids participate in an 8-week program at the high school on the track. Beginning at kindergarten age all the way through. With the high schoolers instructing the younger kids. So it could be quite a program coming up with the track.
It's great.
And they're going to, CYO is going to continue the program next summer. So
There was a lot of kids at the Tina's 5K race.
Yes.
That are future
track stars.
Track stars. A couple of them ran by me. I wasn't very happy about that.
Maybe we ought to think about the way to structure the discussion going forward.
Right.
You have field issues. You got capital expenses confronting you for replacing the field turf and replacing the track. You've got issues at the field house. We have issues at Parkway Field. We have bathroom issues, and we all confront increased demand for a small supply of fields. And the reality for the community is, unlike many communities, neither of us have enough room to do everything. Municipal groups only on municipal fields and school groups only on school fields. And so, we're sort of a poster child for shared services that dates back decades.
Absolutely.
And although that presents some struggles, it also means that these public assets are in great use by lots of different people. And so we have a shared interest and a shared responsibility to figure out the best way forward. And maybe there are some creative options. And maybe, as we've discussed in some sort of work sessions, there are opportunities to share even more deeply than we do now, and certainly to think at least divergently about the funding mechanisms for it. And maybe, there are some intermunicipal agreements or something like that can drive the way forward.
Maybe we could have a small committee of people to work on.
Does that seem to make sense, a committee?
Yeah.
Sure. All right, so let's resolve that that's an outcome of this meeting. We'll sit down and figure out what that ought to be and put it in place.
Great.
That would be wonderful.
And you'll be getting more feedback from your open discussion tomorrow night.
Right.
And any of you feel free to come.
All right. Mindy's already volunteered. So.
Thank you, Mindy.
Any comment from the public of any sort? If anybody had anything they wanted to add or contribute?
You lost them a long time ago.
See that?
I do have one comment before we close.
Okay.
And I would appreciate your help. No, I'm not kidding. And I would appreciate the village's help. You have made this announcement a couple times, but I do want to reemphasize that STAR is a serious issue this year. You have to actually, as a taxpayer in New York, be proactive. If you have enhanced STAR, there's nothing to worry about because you've already got it.
That would be seniors and veterans exemptions and the like.
Right. But if you're just, if you make less than $500,000 a year and you want to keep your STAR, you should have by now received a letter from the state that gave you a PIN number that you can go online. Has everybody here received a letter from the state?
I got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
If you go online and you put in that PIN number and you fill out that information,
You just don't get the mail.
you should get STAR. Now the key is they don't really give you a confirmation that it happened. So I ask people to take a screenshot or to print something out just so you can prove it. I was in the unfortunate situation a couple of years ago personally of sending in the STAR information and then getting my tax bill, and believe it or not, there was no STAR savings. So I actually had to go to the town of Mount Pleasant and go through a 3-month process and actually get my star back. But I would like that not to happen to other people. So have a record that you actually filled it out just in case there are problems. If you have not gotten a letter from the state or have misplaced it, give Mount Pleasant a call. Town Hall at Mount Pleasant, and they can give you a number to call to deal with it, because it's not in any of our interests for people's taxes to go up needlessly. But you have till December 31st. Just want to say that. And if you guys could just reinforce
Patty, we have
that.
that form up on our website too, that information, don't we?
I had it on there. I think it got bumped by
So we
some of the
should put it back up again. It's just, it's just a requalification for STAR that the state hadn't done for many
Before we
years.
have to change another tape, and because we have our meeting.
Right, no, I know.
We have to,
Sure. I just want to get that in there because it's.
yeah.
We thank you all.
Thank
Productive
you.
conversation.
Thank
We
you.
look forward to more productive
3 tapes,
conversations
yeah.
on and offline. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Always good to see you.